Oh no. Back over the falls too. Oh. Getting older, popping up isn't as easy as it was when we were 21. It's harder because it's such a tight position to start off with and then to pop up straight. So I called my friend Chris Brown, who owns Camp Surf. They've been teaching surfing for, gosh, I don't know, 20, 30 years, something like that. Man, this location, there he is. What is going on, man?
Buddy, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing?
Good.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the non-existent surf. It's all we got these days.
Tell me what makes you so special to know how to pop up surf.
Well, I've taught a lot of people how to surf, and owning Camp Surf, I definitely have seen a lot of what not to do. It's a very interesting subject. I think everybody struggles with it at one time or another. It's like the golf swing, where if you break it down too much, you give people too much to think about, and then they get confused.
How much does stiffness play a role in popping up?
Each person is an individual case, but there's strength, there's flexibility, and there's your physical build. If you're really lanky and have long arms, it's easier to create space to bring up your legs underneath. Conversely, if your arms aren't as long, it's harder. You don't have as much space to bring those legs up underneath you, so you have to compensate through strength of clearing that space, and it's a little tougher.
So wait, a T-Rex would just suck at surfing?
It would be difficult to stand up. Each person, each individual, it's going to be different. But there are some universal things that are going to help everybody. If you're stronger, if you're more flexible, those things are going to help no matter what. I think the very first thing you want to do is take an honest assessment of where you are. And so the best thing to do is just in your own home, in the comfort of your own home, lay down on your living room floor and simulate a pop-up. And how does that look? How does it feel? How are you doing? Because a lot of people, it's almost like they know there's a little problem there, but they're avoiding it. And then they think it's just magically gonna work out when they get in the water. And I'm here to tell you, as a surf instructor who's taught thousands of people, it doesn't just magically happen out there. It's gonna be only harder once you're in the water on an unstable surface. So start out, do a couple pop-ups at home, see how it feels. And then if you're having trouble, try to assess what it is. Is it the strength? Is it your upper body? Are you having trouble pushing yourself up? Is it the flexibility through your hips, which this is a really common one for older surfers?
Sure.
And then once you have an assessment of where your weak spots are, you can plan out a regimen to make that better.
I know a lot of people like myself are thinking, I don't got time to go to the gym. I don't want to get a gym membership.
Not a problem.
What are you talking about?
You get as easy as doing push-ups, stretching. I know for some of us who might be a little bit longer in the tooth, it's easier once you're warmed up. So I find that it's easier to stretch like when I'm in a hot shower and everything's just a little more supple. Now it's easier for me to stretch and I get more out of it. But it can be as easy as push-ups, sit-ups, and some stretching at home. Another tool that I think is really useful, and especially when we're talking about older surfers, is a Bosu ball. And it can work for a lot of things, but if you are on the internet all the time and you're looking at other videos about pop-ups, you will almost always see a guy using either a Bosu ball or some version of that.
Right.
And it's good because it can mimic that instability that we get once we go out in the water and you're on that unstable surface. And then you can also use it to work with stability for standing, which again, as you get older, that becomes tougher as well. So doing balance things on the Bosu ball is great. And if it's flexibility and hips in particular, yoga would probably be my number one option. Again, the heated yoga seems to be really good because it loosens you up and you just get that much more out of it. And Pilates is another great option for lengthening and helping with your overall flexibility.
I get a lot of people asking me how age pops into it. How does that play into popping up?
It's huge. I had a physical therapist one time that explained to me that when you're a young athlete, you're defined by what your strengths are. You're fast, you're strong, whatever they are. As you get older, into your 40s and 50s, as an athlete, you're often defined by what injuries you've had and what's holding you back.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, is true. And as middle-aged guys, we're still trying to get out there and stay active and play sports. It's important to understand what your injuries are, how is it limiting you, and how can I counteract that. A lot of times the things that are holding us back, we turn our back on them because we know they're going to be hard.
Right.
So you really have to understand what it is and confront it. And going to yoga, if you are struggling with your flexibility, is perfect. The nice thing about flexibility too is you can actually see big gains relatively quickly, especially if you haven't been stretching at all.
Right.
If you start and you stick with it, you're going to notice big gains pretty quickly. So once you start to see those gains, then it becomes easier to do it every day because you're like, wow, this is actually helping.
Right. One of the biggest difference I noticed from even a really good surfer, not necessarily a pro surfer, to an average or below average surfer is the speed of the pop-up, is the knowledge of knowing that next step. They're not thinking about the pop-up. Can you explain that?
So there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it, and the pop-up is obviously at the core, but wave knowledge, positioning, getting yourself into the right spot on the wave at the right time. When you watch that elite surfer who's making it look so easy, they're doing all of those things just in the blink of an eye, and you're not noticing any of it because you're just seeing a beautiful ride.
Right.
And conversely, people who aren't the greatest surfers often find themselves too deep, they're too late, and so then you see them get in a bad position and fall, and a lot of times we say, oh, well, they didn't pop up quick enough or they didn't do this. Well, maybe that was part of the problem,
right?
But had they been in the perfect spot, they probably would have had time to stand up anyway, even if their pop-up wasn't perfect. It's just that 10,000 hours of experience in the water. You know, you can't mimic that. So you need to have that to get to that elite level. A lot of people just kind of start thinking about, oh, my pop-up, and they think about it almost like a golf swing. Like, I have to do this, my leg has to come through here. And I think you can get away with a lot of flaws in your pop-up as long as your wave knowledge is good. Your margin for error is a lot bigger if you're getting yourself into the right part of the wave. The right equipment is huge. As you get older, going to some sort of a bigger board, more volume, even a long board. There's a lot of people who just, once they hit a certain age, if they want to stay in the water, they have to go to a longboard, and that's okay. I know personally, I love that feeling of shortboarding, and I still feel like a Grom, but Father Time is undefeated, and I'm 54 years old, and I notice every year I have just a little more volume in my boards, and it's okay. Like, I'm having a blast.
Show us what we're supposed to be doing.
All right, so I'll start off doing a couple pop-ups and show you hopefully kind of what it should look like, what we hope it looks like. Right. And then we'll talk about a couple of common issues that people have. So we want it to be somewhat quick and very smooth, and ideally both your feet are hitting the sand right about the same time. So it should look something like this. And then you're real low, the low center of gravity, a lot of bend in the knees. So let's try that again. Paddle, paddle, pop up. I've always tended to kind of drag my front knee a little bit too. There are a lot of great surfers who do that, but you want to make sure that it's smooth and that you're getting to a good balance point on the board as soon as you can.
All right, looks like you're gonna get run over.
How did Chris die? Oh, he was doing a video on pop-up. So a couple issues you might run into at home when you're checking out your own pop-up. If you're having a problem with upper body strength, you're gonna feel it in that first phase of the pop-up when you go to push here. And it's very similar to doing a push-up or even like it going into a downward dog in yoga. So if you're trying to create that space and you're having trouble with that movement, then you know I need to work on my upper body strength. Push-ups, yoga, including downward dog, those kind of things are very quickly going to give you more strength in your upper body. Now, the one that a lot of older surfers struggle with, myself included, is the tight hips. So that's more of the second part of the pop-up. As you've already cleared your upper body and now you're going to pull through the lower body, you're going to feel some binding through here if you have a flexibility issue. And so then if you're feeling that real strongly, yoga and Pilates, stretching in a warm environment are the best things you can do. Say you have a hip injury and you're just not able to make that movement. there are alternative ways you can get to the same position. For instance, you can get to one knee first and then pop up from there, which obviously that's a smaller move. Or you can just kind of gently drag this knee. Now, obviously that's not gonna be ideal for if you're riding a tiny shortboard and in crunchy, fast waves. But again, you have to be honest with yourself about what your limitations are. If you say, I have this hip injury that I just can't pop up normally, get a longboard, get a mid-length, try to surf waves that are maybe a little more of what we call or think of longboard waves. And you're gonna be able to, as long as you do it in a smooth fashion, you can still stand up without just exploding your feet in one movement. And again, it's really important to self-assess and see what your weak points are and make the necessary adjustments. And if you do that, you can have fun and keep surfing at any age. So another really common misconception is that you have to explode up to your feet super quick. And obviously in a perfect world, you are getting up fast and getting to a comfortable balanced position. But what I see a lot of times is people doing this. They're trying to explode to their feet and it throws them off balance. So they'll do something like this and they kind of end up here, right? Because they've used so much power to push up that it knocks them off balance. So I would say it's very important that you can sacrifice some of that quickness for smoothness. So even if it's a little slower, it's gonna be better as long as you're on balance. So instead of the real explosive move, it's more of a here. And so that might be slower, but now I'm in a really balanced, comfortable position once I get up. There are gonna be exceptions, obviously, if it's the wave of the day and you end up with a late drop and you just got to pop up super fast, then you got to make do. But overall, make sure that you're making that smooth transition from your stomach to your feet. The more you slow it down, the more you throw in going to one knee or other alternatives to help, the more you probably are going to have to go from a shortboard to some sort of bigger board. But that's okay. Like the objective is just to keep you having fun, being stoked, and being in the water. And if your pop-up is screwed and you're just not getting in the water, then we want to change that. And so I've confronted this in a big way in my own quiver over the last few years, and every year my boards are getting slightly bigger. And I, ever since I was a kid, I had it in my mind, well, I don't want to be on a board that's so big that I can't fit it into those tight places like where I really want to go on the wave. And what I can say after going with bigger boards for a couple years is I'm not noticing that at all. I'm just having a ton of fun. I'm catching waves. I'm able to surf the way I want to surf, and it's keeping me stoked. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you have more questions or want to see more information on this, feel free to reach out to me directly on Instagram at cbcampsurf, or just comment on Brad's video and we can come back and answer your questions and maybe even revisit this topic again later.